Well, time has absolutely flown since we have all been together. And of course, it is draft week here on segment number 49 of our Instant Reaction podcast, alongside Ian Schraier, Mike Szabo, and Larry Przetakiewicz, Esquire, right down below us. Joey Jarzynka with you. But it is not all about draft week that we are discussing. This afternoon, it became official, ladies and gentlemen. Aaron Rodgers was just traded from the Green Bay Packers to the New York Jets. The return, pretty underwhelming if you are a Packers fan. When you look at it, the Packers agreed Monday afternoon to deal the quarterback Aaron Rodgers and their 2023 first-round draft pick, which was pick number 15, and the 2023 fifth-round pick number 170 to the Jets for New York's 2023 first-round pick number 13, a 2023 second-round pick at number 42, a 2023 sixth-round pick number 207, and a conditional 2024 second-round pick that becomes a first if Aaron Rodgers plays 65% of the plays this season. That is, to me, a pretty underwhelming return when you look at it, especially since the conditional second, conditional first. I think it'll be a first round pick anyway, but I got to start with LP just below us. Larry, you're a Jets fan. You've been suffering for as long as Mike Szabo has been alive, for a whopping, 2 minutes. It's really unbelievable to see that the Jets are making these moves, and Joe Douglas has to be already a candidate for, you have to, pick him up on his high horse and just really love what he's doing.
There is no doubt about it, Joey. When Joe Douglas first came in, there was all this hoopla for him. Then, it took time and it became a trust the process kind of scenario, especially in a lot of the Jets, fan groups on Twitter, on Facebook, things of that nature. And really, since he hit a home run in the last draft, which puts a lot of pressure on them for this draft, they try to come close to repeating what they did last year. To all of a sudden go from the youngest team in the NFL with the youngest number of starters to all of a sudden become a win now team in, the course of 1 or 2 seasons, where they then have to turn around and quickly fix the situation at quarterback in order to take advantage of this top defense, take advantage of young players on rookie contracts. You have to give Joe Douglas all the credit in the world here. And you look at the trade, you broke down all the picks. But if you think about it, for a guarantee of 1 year of Aaron Rodgers, you're pretty much backing up 2 spots in the first round. You're giving up one of your second-round picks because you already have one from your prior trade with the Browns. And you're likely giving up the first next year because he's going to play 65% of the snaps. I know you have the 5th-round pick. You have the 6th round. A lot of those are negligible, right? When you really look at it, you're giving up likely just the first-round pick next year, the second rounder this year, and you're backing up 2 spots. I was talking to Ian about it earlier. You back up 2 spots. Joe D's got his draft board, and you got to figure the short list he has of guys who would be available at 13. There's at least 1 or 2 of them who are probably going to be sitting there at 15. So I think the Jets might still be in good shape.
Yeah, I look at it, guys, where, you look at what had gone down with the Russell Wilson trade from a season ago. And I think to myself, when you look at the 2 firsts, the 2 seconds, the 5th, the Drew Lock deal, and then the Noah Fant the tight end had gone up to Seattle as well. I look at it and I say to myself that, I understand that they tried to kind of, I would assume, look back to that trade as kind of, all right, this is how we're kind of going to piece that together a little bit. I understand that Aaron Rodgers is a bit older. He does have, obviously, probably, I don't want to say a little more upside. It's tough. You put a solid offensive line in front of him. You give him weapons. We know what he's capable of, Ian Schraier. This is a different time as a Jets fan. This is a different time as really the Jets organization, where you're going for it all. And do you think that it was an underwhelming return, or was it a solid return for the Packers when they have Jordan Love right now as their QB1 here this evening?
Well, Joey, I think we were all expecting Green Bay to be in the thick of a rebuild. I'm not so sure that the direction of the Green Bay Packers was anything less. But I'm going to take it back to March for a second, because I remember you and I, Joey, on our way to the Big East tournament, and one of our colleagues was in the back seat of your car, and
yes,
we were talking about what it was going to cost to bring Aaron, who's a big Jets fan, and we were talking about what it was going to cost to bring Aaron Rodgers to the Jets. And the first thing you and I mentioned was what the precedent was set by the Russell Wilson trade.
Yep. And
here's the difference. And then this is in like looking back on that conversation and looking back on the deal and why it took so long for this trade to form, because the Green Bay Packers would not back down from their asking price of at least 2 first-round picks, and nor should they. I mean, the Green Bay held all the leverage. I mean, granted, Aaron Rodgers could say, "I retire," and they, and in the end, the Packers wouldn't have had to pay him anyway. But Green Bay had more leverage than I think Aaron Rodgers was letting on, and they didn't want to get rid of him for anything less than what they felt he was worth. And for the thing that the biggest, I don't want to say that it was underwhelming. I don't think the trade was underwhelming. I think initially when I read it, I was like, wow, the Jets really fleeced here. Because ultimately they got a first-round pick out. They still got to keep their first-round pick. I mean, they moved down 2 spots, but they still got to keep a first-round pick. The key was how they were able to work the language for that second first-rounder, because clearly, barring something historical in terms of, and granted, things with the Jets have always known to be historical in a way. God forbid something happens to him. He's going to play 65% of the snaps. So we know the 2024 pick is going to be a 1. So for me, no, I don't find the deal necessarily underwhelming. I think because of the Russell Wilson trade, the reason this trade is different than the Wilson trade is because Aaron Rodgers after next year can play 65% of the snaps and say, I'm done, and the Jets lose a first-round pick out of it with Rodgers potentially retiring, right? So that is the weighing the pros and cons of it, why it's different than the Russell Wilson trade. As for the Jets for going for it all, you could say, 2009, 2010, this is the first time since maybe the back-to-back AFC championship games under Rex Ryan that they really seem in a position to do that. I don't even think in those 2 years, because remember, 2009, the Jets backed into the playoffs. They needed to win and get help in the last week of the season, and then made it all the way to the AFC championship with Peyton Manning. And then the following year had all these expectations, went into Foxborough, and then lost to Pittsburgh. I'm going to take it back to a year before Mike Szabo was born, literally. If you go back to the 1999 Jets,
right,
when they went to the AFC Championship in '98 with Vinny Testaverde and Wayne Corbett and Curtis Martin, and lost to the John Elway Denver Broncos, and then in '99 Week 1, Vinny tore his Achilles. And then then they think 2000, Vinny's healthy. We're going to come back, the year of the Monday Night Miracle against the Dolphins. And they end up losing their last 3 games. And that, I would say this is the first time there's been this much pressure on the Jets since probably like 99, 2000. If I had to say, like, I don't want to necessarily poo-poo on the 2009, 2010 years, because they weren't supposed to be there in 09. In 98, that was a different story. Parcells was coaching. They were just a loaded team. And then obviously after 2000, that the AFC East gave way to Tom Brady. That is probably the last time I can remember the Jets really feeling like they're going for it all.
If I'm not mistaken, before we get to Szabo here, LP 2000, I believe, was the last time, aside from 2022, that the Jets had one heck of a draft year.
Yes.
And when you look back at 2000, you look back at 2022. Now I can't believe it's already a year ago. You say to yourself, how do you, and you said this yourself, how can you replicate that? How can you come back to that and perform well, just like how Joe Douglas did last year? That must be really tough on a general manager, especially with so much pressure on you now, but also you look at the other side of it and say, is this draft class stronger than 2022?
Well, Joey, it's tough because like you said, last year they drafted the offensive and defensive rookie of the year. And listen, if Breece Hall doesn't get hurt, maybe he's the offensive rookie of the year, or maybe 100%. He's second or third, on the list, depending on how that season winds up. So really, they really hit a trifecta had Breece Hall stayed healthy. In 2000, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was the year they had 4 first-round picks. And they really did hit home runs.
That was the John Abraham year, I think, right, Larry?
That's correct.
Like yes. John Abraham, Chad Pennington, maybe Anthony Becht, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to look it up because it's 22 years ago.
Greg Ellis, maybe, I think too. Yeah.
I definitely think that there are strengths in this draft class, but I think what we saw last year in the draft was they were drafting positions of need, which is always important, but it looked like they were drafting around Zach Wilson to give him an opportunity to succeed, which they were unfair to Donald. The old administration never drafted to put their quarterback in a position to succeed. I think JD did everything this year to try to get their quarterback to succeed. Unfortunately, the quarterback himself could not succeed, but we're screaming for Mike White, right, and other guys who just could handle the pressure and had better pieces around them to let them, Mike White got paid because there was a good team around Mike White when he was never, they made him, the savior, but it was never going to be this stud quarterback. And it ends up getting him paid, which, good for him. But I think what the Jets should continue to do in this draft is look at the positions of need. They didn't get Odell Beckham. Are they going to look to draft a wide receiver to try to complement that? You have a quarterback who's now aging, right? He clearly is aging. Do you want to continue to build an offensive line? We talked about the 2009, 2010, Jets. They had that draft where they took the Brickashaw Ferguson and Nick Mangold with their 2 first-round picks. And those guys played forever for the Jets, and that's the reason. It wasn't Mark Sanchez. It was the defense. It was the good offensive line, the good running game that got them to those back-to-back AFC Championship games.
Yeah, and they also tried to find a replacement or try and find someone similar in Mekhi Becton that simply has not worked out. Right. But now we've got to bring in someone here that the only quarterback that he knows for the New York Jets, his name is Alex Falk. That's all that Mike Szabo knows. Mike, I got to ask you this. Do you know who Aaron Rodgers is? Let's play this game. Hey, Szabo, who's that guy? Who is that guy, Mike Szabo? And now LP Esquire knows what this is all about. Mike Szabo has no idea what has gone on before yesterday because he was just born yesterday.
I'm not that young, Joey. I've had a few couple trips around the sun.
I am so happy to see you here and to just play the cliffhangers game with you.
Yeah, you've been holding on to that one for a while.
I have, and I've wanted to use it for so long.
Give it a couple more weeks for the Yankees. We'll get it in there. I promise.
Szabo, tell us about Aaron Rodgers. Tell us about your thoughts here.
Well, I think you got to give credit to Joe Douglas and the patience here, and that. I mean, I'm not even a Jets fan like LP over here, and I think I had to even be getting frustrated by when's it going to happen? You have Rodgers' comments here and there. You have the cost, the Packers, what they're going to do, who has more of the leverage and whatnot. You're thinking at one point, do you just start pivoting or, what do you do here? The options are dwindling, and now the Jets in the last few weeks, the last month, I mean, it's either Rodgers or, God knows what. That's where you positioned yourself, really. So at this point, he really had to get a deal done for the Jets to field anything competitive next year. And he executed a really good deal, and I think you're right. I think compared to what the expected haul was supposed to be, the hyped compensation of what the deal was supposed to be, it is underwhelming of what the return could be for Green Bay. But I mean, ever since I think Rodgers said this, he was angling to move to the Jets, I think we had a feeling this was going to happen. I think it took a while longer. I even thought this was going to happen on draft night, which I guess takes away a little bit of the excitement from draft night now that this happens here on Monday. But I mean, now the Jets have a quarterback. I mean, now the expectations are going to just completely go through the roof for a fan base that has just been completely starved for success for such a long time.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head, Mike, because again, it's that success factor that, when you look at it, in this New York area, you hear always, what is the saying, LP, Mets, Jets, Islanders typically, and Nets as well, right? It's that brutal quadruplet there of teams that just go through this. The highs and the lows are mainly just lows. And for you as a Mets and Jets fan, good Lord help you. But hey, listen, it's a positive now that things are happening here. But for you as a Jets fan, how do you stay plateaued with the expectations so high and the results? They're big, one giant question mark right now.
Well, being a Jet fan, I think it's easier than you think, because when you haven't seen success, there's no real expectation for it. As a Met fan, Twitter is always LOL Mets, right?
Yes.
Always. The Jets are worse than that. They have been historically. And you made the joke before about Szabo being born yesterday, and he grows facial hair very quickly. And so
Benjamin Button style.
But it's a big deal this spring, right? First time in 29 years that all of the local NBA and NHL teams have all made the playoffs.
Right?
We already got baseball season underway. We got a long way to go, but you would think Mets, Yankees both have a shot at making the postseason. They can both make deep runs. We'll see. Mets got pitching issues right now, but they're weathering the storm. But the Giants made the playoffs last year. You now have Rodgers with the Jets. You have a chance for every single major sporting franchise, right, in the New York metropolitan area to all make the playoffs in their respective seasons. That's not even including the soccer teams. Between the Red Bulls and FC, I believe they would also make the playoffs. I mean, I don't follow that as much. But Ian, I think you said that they're both typical contenders, right? I know FC had won the championship a few years ago. So, it's a great time to be a sports fan in New York. And I remember, is it 10 years ago? Well, there was a time when Boston was on top of the world. Yes. Right? The Patriots, the Celtics had the trifecta. The Bruins were always good. It feels great to be a New York sports fan again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you think to yourself, you go back to what we were talking about, Ian, in terms of, the return too. One thing I want to bring up here is the fact that the Jets were able to get a first round pick back and move down 2 spots. Now, I look back to the Seattle and the Denver Broncos trade where they were 2 solidified first-round draft picks. Now, I understand that in addition to all of that, pretty much right after that big extension was signed with Russell Wilson. And I understand the fact that Aaron Rodgers can basically come to the Jets, play 1 game, and retire the next day. And I see why also that conditional first-round pick was thrown in there. But when you I guess kind of recap this trade and when you look back to last year's trade and you kind of you put 2 and 2 together and you use that as kind of the mold of how you make this deal, wouldn't you expect, because of Aaron Rodgers, his resume a little bit better than Russell Wilson, to have that solidified first-round pick. Let's just say, for instance, and I know Jets fans may destroy me in a second, let's say he pulls a 2008 Tom Brady and blows out his ACL in week 1. It can happen. Freak things have happened. I'm sorry, LP and other Jets fans, but it has happened. What if they don't get that first-round pick?
I think a lot of this all goes back to what I said before, Joey, about the possibility of retirement, and I think it's draft week. I think we knew at this point, because really this week the pressure started to add a little more on Green Bay, even though they had the leverage, right? Because the Jets had to start coming up with some kind of an insurance policy of what quarterback are we potentially drafting? Was it going to be Anthony Richardson out of the University of Florida? Is it Herndon Hooker out of the University of Tennessee? Like, what project are we going to draft? Because we're not getting C.J. Stroud and we're not getting Bryce Young unless we trade up, which to this point is not going to happen. The Jets are not going to, like, it's worthy enough that Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas got the reprieve, right, after having the year that they did and Zach Wilson being just such a huge failure, that you get an opportunity with a second quarterback, no less one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. So, you know, I think that I think the pressure was on Green Bay to make a deal because the Jets were going to have to decide what they were going to do Thursday or Friday or Saturday. And I think that really kind of pushed, you know, everything forward a little bit and had to get the wheels back in motion, because the Jets were the only, I mean, even though like Craig Carton, of all people, Craig Carton was reporting like San Francisco would be heavily interested in Aaron Rodgers, and why not, right? Just put Rodgers right back in the same, where he's from. He's from Northern California. He went to school at Cal. Why wouldn't he go back home? But I don't put too much stake into that. I think the 49ers are so built into Brock Purdy, and they're willing to cut bait already on Trey Lance, which is just still mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
But getting back on point, I think that's what helped the Jets, and I think I don't foresee something crazy like that happening, even though it's been very much akin to Jets history for something like crazy like that to happen. And I think you got to see about what this does for the Jets going forward too, right? It's that they've got 2 years to win a championship, if not maybe one. I mean, everything tells you that Rodgers is going to stay for the maximum 2 years. It seems like this is where he wants to be. But things have, as Joey said, things have taken a turn. And you know what's crazy about this whole thing, and I don't want to sit here and make this a whole AFC East preview, is that this doesn't necessarily yet put the Jets at the top of the AFC East. Does it make them a huge contender? Absolutely. Are they in the playoffs right now? No questions asked. Absolutely. The question is where. You know, I know Josh Allen has still yet to prove himself in the playoffs to win a big game yet, even though, granted, 2 years ago, you look at the AFC divisional game against Buffalo in that big 52-45 overtime shootout. Mm-hmm. But last year, very underwhelming, right? Even against Miami. You know, but you still got to think Buffalo's top of the heap right now, and Miami still has two of the best wide receivers in the game. This should be the year that the Jets finally climb out of last place, and New England should take their rightful place at the bottom with Mac Jones until, you know, they kind of turn things around in Foxborough. But to get back to your point, Joey, I think it's a lot of it came down to the reason they didn't get the, I guess if you want to call it, the Russell Wilson-like sized haul that they maybe should have gotten, is because of age, as a result, potential retirement, and the fact now at this point they tried reaching out to the Jets over and over again. Clearly there was a lull. They knew the Jets were going to come back, but at this point the Jets have to have some sort of insurance policy with who are they going to turn to a quarterback in the draft if Aaron Rodgers falls through, because clearly the future is not Zach Wilson. They didn't get a chance to re-sign Mike White. He went to Miami because the Jets got caught up in all of the negotiations with Aaron Rodgers. So I think this was, I think, in my opinion, when you look at it from a 360-degree view, I think this was the best case scenario really for both teams.
All right, guys, now let's close out our show with this question here. LP, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Szabo and finish off with Ian. Where do the Jets go at pick number 15 come Thursday night?
I have to say on the offensive line. I still maintain that position. I was hoping that they were going to get what's his name? Skowronek? Did I say his name right? Skowronek?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was hoping that they would get him at 13. I think there was a chance he'd be there at 13. I don't know if he's there at 15 now. But, he was really of the guys I looked at and thought what this team could use. You can kind of plug him in anywhere on the offensive line. And I think that would have been good for the Jets. It would be good for Aaron Rodgers. It would help a Breece Hall who's coming back from injury. So, that's where I would go. I would go on offensive line. It'll make everybody else on your team a little better, having that extra, second half a second, especially with a 39-year-old quarterback.
Right.
But, I think they have enough depth at wide receiver where they shouldn't be burning a first-round pick, in that direction. You want to go later on in that direction, that's fine. There's plenty of tight ends on this team's roster to me, it would be OL.
Yeah. From Northwestern, Peter Skoronski.
Skoronski, there you go.
Yeah, is the correct pronunciation there. Mike, for you, did the Jets go? Did they go offensive? Did they go offensive line, or did they go someplace else? Where do you think?
Yeah, I agree with LP. I think it's smarter to go that route. We've seen the health of the offensive line be an issue for the Jets recently. I know there were conversations out there about even getting Rodgers. They should still look at a quarterback, which I think is just pisses off an already irrational and egotistical kind of guy. And who knows who would even be available at that point. I just think it's prudent. You now got these 2 years. You're in win-now mode. You have an aging quarterback. You got to put all the pieces together. You have most of the pieces at wide receiver. If anything, like LP said, maybe burn a later round pick there for some more depth. But I definitely go offensive line. So you look at your board, get the best available in that position there, and fortify that position since health has been an issue and consistency has been an issue there.
Yeah, and exactly what LP said too is that we really have not seen consistency on the offensive line since the aforementioned D'Brickashaw-Ferguson, as well as Nick Mangold as well, both of which are in the Jets Hall of Fame. Ian, let's close it out. Where do you see the Jets going?
Yeah, I'm fully in support with offensive line here. I still think Mekhi Becton's going to be the starting left tackle come week 1 for the Jets, and I don't think that's going to change anything on the left side of the line with him and Elijah Vera-Tucker. They got Connor McGovern back to play center. So I think they're going to go O-line, but they're going to address the right side of the line, which has been the biggest issue for them, besides because last year Becton, Vera-Tucker both could not stay healthy. This year you're hoping to get a fully healthy season out of both of them and that they'll hope both contribute significantly. And now you try to fortify the right side of the line. And I think that's where they go offensive line. With the trade for Rodgers, I would say you could even see Joe Douglas try to trade back up into the first round like he did last year when he got Jermaine Johnson. There are other areas that the Jets need to address. Linebacker for sure. They need an edge rusher desperately, and they need secondary help. I mean, they need help in almost every facet of. I mean, despite everything going on with Aaron Rodgers, it almost freakishly in a way, because it's like what we say in baseball when you go out and you acquire the best hitter on the planet, like having Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout and having no pitching. It's kind of the same way a little bit with the Jets. They have just about every offensive piece they need to make the playoffs, but they're not all there defensively. But right now the job is getting yourself to the playoffs and putting enough around Aaron Rodgers. So offensive line.
Yeah, and also keep in mind too, right now at this very moment, assuming that not even assuming, but there will be a lot of additional work for Joe Douglas too in terms of becoming a mathematician, because as of right now, according to Spot Track, the Jets are on the bottom of the barrel in terms of salary cap. And because obviously with that massive contract that Aaron Rodgers comes in with, the Jets right now are $6.2 million over the salary cap. Obviously, there will be some restructuring and reshuffling where that number will eventually disappear, and we'll get back into the positives where the Jets will be able to figure some things out, maybe free agency, to get some other guys. But keep in mind too, it helps also that they were able to trade down to number 15, because the higher the picks go in the first round, usually I think it's what, $6 million is usually, I think.
Like about $5 million is usually is like the extra amount.
Yeah.
So hold on to for draft picks. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So they have to do that. So we'll see where the Jets go. We know the Packers, they are in rebuild mode. Jordan Love is the new quarterback as of today. Of course, that can change. We will see what goes on. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, segment number 49 comes to a close as we have been able to recap the wild day of the NFL on draft week. Alongside Ian Schraier, Mike Szabo, Larry Przetakiewicz, Joey Jarzynka saying so long, and we will see you all at some point in the near future. Of course, follow us on YouTube and social media all around by searching Eastern Observer. We'll see you next time.